Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned, saying attacks on Russian territory are now inevitable.
Well, it follows that drone attack in Moscow that targeted the city's financial district, as you can see, causing some damage to skyscrapers.
So, today we're asking, what does that mean for the war in Ukraine? Well, joining us for analysis is the security expert, Will Geddes. Really good to see you this morning, Will. And that footage went viral over the weekend. Really quite shocking stuff. We haven't seen that yet, have we?
No, we're going to see a lot more. I think that's inevitable. But I think one of the things which is really important is these are not just spontaneous and sporadic attacks in the centre of Moscow. These are very directed attacks. And this particular attack, from what I understand, was allegedly against the GRU's intelligence unit, which runs bots, which fundamentally are saturating social media in Russia, trying to keep, obviously, Putin's narrative at the very top. There is also reports that within this particular building, in fact, were the headquarters for Fancy Bear. And people will know or have heard of Fancy Bear because Fancy Bear were involved in a lot of ransomware and malware being sent into the West to try and obviously attack Western assets.
I mean, look, this changes the dynamic significantly, though, all of this, doesn't it? We know Putin is now touting again the idea of a nuclear retaliation.
Yes, I mean, and the particular threat that he's presenting, Stephen, which is quite concerning, is the new Poseidon initiative. Now, the Poseidon torpedo drone, which they've been developing since 2018, is particularly concerning because it's a 100-megaton torpedo, which can be directed, but what it will do is detonate offshore, creating a tsunami effect. So fundamentally, that could be a 300-foot wave. Now, if this was deployed, obviously, the whole ante has been upped, and I think the chances of him actually deploying it are very, very remote, but we can't say completely impossible, because he could possibly deploy it against somewhere like Odessa, rather than, as they've been showing on their propaganda media channels, obviously the deployment against the United Kingdom, because obviously if it was deployed against the United Kingdom, it would wipe out pretty much the whole of the UK.
Really interesting, though, these drone attacks, we're seeing pictures now of some of the damage. It does show, doesn't it, that the Russian air defence is pretty weak. It
is, but it's very difficult. I mean, when these drones are actually launched, and these drones which are being launched aren't the type that you would buy online or you can buy in the shops. These are Beaver drones. Now, the distance between Ukraine and Moscow is only 500 kilometres, but these Ukraine-built drones have the range of about 1,000 kilometres, and they'll launch a number of them at the same time. And we saw this when this all first started happening in May this year, where they launched about 8 at the same time. Now, I think Ukraine's being very measured in their response, and people might not believe so, in the fact that they are actually launching these during silent hours. These are at night, and this most recent attack was at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So they're not looking to obtain, obviously, human casualties. But when Putin says this is a terrorist attack, from their perspective, it is, because obviously it's something that Ukraine's trying to do. And it's not dissimilar to what we did during World War II against Berlin, where Churchill actually requested the RAF to do bombing raids into Berlin to basically just tell the local people and say, you've been brought into this fight and we will bring the fight to you. Yeah,
and it's difficult, but you can't help but think, well, fair play.
Yeah.
In some respects on this, can't you? And I suppose there is almost a propaganda side to this, because we don't know particularly what the Russians are being told or quite how they feel about all of this. Well, if it's brought to their doorstep, perhaps they'll turn on Putin.
Absolutely. But again, it's this targeting, Stephen, of bot factories and those elements which the government and the Ministry of Defence are trying to use to try and sway and influence, obviously, the information that's getting into the local Russian people.
Should we talk about the response to this attack? Because Dmitry Medvedev, quite concerning rhetoric from him, who said he warned that Kyiv should pray to our warriors that they do not allow global nuclear fire to flare up.
Yeah, again, this is sort of it's drum banging by his part. Again, they can't come back without a comment or without some fairly sort of vigilant rhetoric. So, yes, I think, again, they realise the implications. And I hope that, obviously, there is some sense still within Putin's regime to say, look, we know that if we do that, we're going to have everything launched against us. So, you know, they have to show that they're going to be as strong as they possibly can. But it's very difficult to stop. Some of these drones have been stopped by frequency, interference, and certainly by some of the measures and countermeasures that you can use against drones now. But when they come in en masse in various different directions against various different targets, what it does say is the intelligence on the ground, the reconnaissance that's being carried out in advance to identify the right targets for these drones to hit, shows that it's more precise. It's not just simply blanketing the Kremlin or blanketing the ministries.
Are you surprised, in a sense, if you take a broader view of this, are you a bit surprised that it's taken so long for Ukraine to go on the offensive?
No, I think it's just about capability, and I think there was a certain threshold they had to get to where the fight was obviously going to go further. What we've seen with Russian airstrikes is they've been hitting civilian targets. We've known that since the beginning of the conflict, but they've now been hitting churches. It's indiscriminate attacks, or are they? That's the question. Are they going to the heart of the Ukraine of trying to hit things which really appeal and affect people rather than just military positions? So I think Ukraine is coming back with a robust defence. There may be some assistance being provided to the Ukraine in the intelligence of gathering of some of the targets that they're aiming for. But I think, it's a very bold move, and I think it's a bold move to basically get to the heart of Russia, because I think, certainly from what we understand, the populace of Russia are turning more and more against this conflict. And again, whether Putin actually listens to the electorate, not that there is an electorate of sorts, but whether he actually listens to the populace, that's a whole other matter.